Hello everyone, this is Peak Entertainment and we are back again. I'm going to talk football now and talk about Arsenal and give an overall look and preview towards the up and coming season, the 2020-21 season. As we all know, the first match is against Fulham away, Saturday lunchtime. So we're going to talk about and preview the match going forward for that. Also the first glut of fixtures from the first stage of Arsenal season. We're also going to talk a bit about Arteta and the certain goals and targets, what I think are more realistic and achievable for Arsenal going ahead for this season, and also reflect a bit about last season, everything that went on, plus the current issues going on with the players, signings that we've made, our activity within the transfer market or near enough our inactivity in the transfer market, and also where we can go forward and what we should be hoping for in the next couple of years. So if we start off the topic and really if we just quickly reflect on last season, as we all know, of course, it was very much of a roller coaster season. It was of course the last season of Emery involved, and you know, it was very much of a sudden announcement, of course, when they decided to sack him. It was just a case of accumulative losses and bad results. And I think it takes a long time talking about it now, but back then, of course, what really I think caused the demise of Emery is that you were starting to get a few empty seats and stands towards the end of his reign. And of course, when you start having that situation, that's when the board will really act. You know, we had many years of Wenger when they were suffering many losses and not hitting the targets that we wanted for Arsenal, but because they were always selling the season tickets, always selling out at the stadium, then Wenger was continually indulged. But of course now Emery didn't have the same history and achievements that Wenger did, so he wasn't going to be afforded the same amount of time. And you always think about it, he only really had a season and a half, so there is the, I think, quite valid argument whether he did have enough time, because if you're going to go around thinking, well, a manager should only have a season and a half, then they're not going to really have enough time to implement their own system, are they? So that was that. And then of course Arteta got recruited, I think it was early December. And overall, yes, he has done a very good job. It's a very good turnaround. Of course, we've all had to put up with the break of the COVID-19. That was very ominous for Arteta himself, of course. He actually caught the coronavirus, and that was really what sparked the whole football world into really taking it seriously, because as we all know, there were still games going on despite the fact that it become a very much of a prominent issue within the country. And of course, once Arteta caught the disease, that's when everybody in football really started taking it seriously. So I think the fact that he got through that and he managed to get the team to win the FA Cup and then obviously later on win the Community Shield, I think he does have to be given praise for that. Of course he does. But despite that, there are still many issues. Now, of course, he has really inherited the mess, if you like, left by Emery, who we could argue really inherited the mess by Wenger. So any post-manager of the Wenger era is always going to be picking up the slack, right? It's always going to have to be fixing and addressing the issues within the squad itself. Now, I've always maintained for years and years and years, the current issue or the biggest issues with Arsenal have always been defensively. The fact that they've not been able to be strong enough defensively to cope with teams that take a very much of a big physical approach against them. Anytime a team gets rough and tough within the midfield, Arsenal just wilter. Any under sustained physical pressure, Arsenal don't seem how to handle it. And over many years now, many teams have noticed that. They've sent that's Arsenal weakness and they target that within the players on the pitch. So any manager from Wenger didn't really address the defensive issues. Emery never really did, and at the moment it doesn't seem like Arteta is at the moment with the signings and the players and the tactics that he's bringing at the moment. And I don't know why every manager who comes to Arsenal still thinks they want to play this kind of fantasy style of football, this kind of Barcelona-like football, very quick pace, quick sharp attacking football, which is great, and if you score a couple of goals, great, but there's no point if you're going to concede 2 or 3 goals at the back in the process. And I think that's one of the biggest issues. I've commented many times when I've done previous match reviews for Arsenal that Arteta has to address going forward in his really full season as a manager. He's got to address and solidify that defensive area and also that midfield area as well. We've got too many playmakers, too many people who are good on the ball but not really showing enough strength and guile to get ready for the battles ahead. So that's one of the big issues I think Arteta does have to address going on this season. You could be fair and say, well, if we're going to be consistent, if Arteta hits a bad run of form earlier on, and we'll talk about the fixtures in a minute, then maybe should he be under the same scrutiny as Emery was, right? Because as I said, Emery had a season and a half, and he began the season, of course, he went on that great 22 match unbeaten run, and everyone thought, yeah, this is a brave new world, Arsenal have turned a new corner. And obviously when the results started going the other way, that's when the favour turned, right? And of course we suffered that huge loss in the Europa League final, and that was the point I think everybody started realising that Emery maybe wasn't a choice. So let's say if we get to December, right, and let's say Arsenal are 14th in the table and they've lost their last 4 consecutive games on the bounce in the league, and they've suffered 2 huge losses within the Europa League. Do we then say that Arteta should be sacked, right? If you want to be kept consistent, and you said, well, Emery wasn't the man for the job, and we should come to that point a lot earlier. If we realise the manager is not performing, then we should get them out a lot earlier, because we could argue maybe that was the problem with Arsene Wenger, that he overstayed his welcome. He was there maybe 2, 3, 4 seasons longer than what he should have done, right? So if Arteta is failing, let's say mid-season, say mid-season, it's a bit difficult, isn't it? Because we're starting late, of course, in September. But let's say if we get to December and he's struggling and he's not getting the results, do we then say he should still be within the job? Now, me personally, I wouldn't sack him if we get to a really kind of dire straits situation by the December, because at the end of the day, chopping and changing managers within a year and a half, 12 to 18 months, doesn't give the club any chance of any continuity, building any foundations and getting any consistency. So I think whatever happens, unless Arsenal are like adrift of the rest of the teams at the bottom, 20 points behind, as long as that scenario doesn't arise, then I think Arteta does deserve the full season to see what happens and how well he can get the team performing. So I won't agree with any scenario where, let's say, we get to December, the team are struggling, and we get many calls for Arteta to be sacked. I think he does deserve the full season to really see if he can make an impact. And not only an impact, more of an improvement. Now, let's talk about the realistic goals. Now, of course, there's no way, I think, even the most ardent and passionate Arsenal fan can say that Arsenal have got any chance of winning the Premier League. I just think this squad is not ready. It's obviously a very young squad. Arteta's building for the future, of course. But let's just get out of the way. Arsenal in no way are going to challenge for the Premier League. I think that's completely out of the question. Don't bring up anything about, well, Leicester did it. Of course, no. That was a very underperforming league when they really required the 3 or 4 of the top clubs to really perform way below their level in order for them to capitalise on it. That ain't going to be the case this year. Liverpool are going to be as strong as ever. They're still my overall pick for the league this season. Man City are going to come back very strong. Man United are going to build on a very impressive finish as well. And also Chelsea are going to come back, and the way they've been spending their front and centre, they've obviously got very serious intent to finish higher than what they did. Tottenham as well will look to improve on their performance. Mourinho is actually going to be under pressure, to perform a lot better than what he did last season. So there's just too many strong teams, better teams, superior teams to us that are ahead of us right now. So I don't think winning the league is a realistic proposition. So again, I'm not going to criticise Emery for that. I would say at least to make a sustained challenge for the top 4. And I would actually tolerate getting in the top 4 if it means we didn't win a trophy. So if we didn't win the FA Cup or the League Cup, but we managed to get in the top 4, I think that would be a very good season for Arteta, and I think that's the most realistic target. I mean, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be very difficult, of course. I think, yes, we're light years behind Liverpool and Man City, but I still think we can compete with United and Leicester, Tottenham as well. All of those teams suffered periods of inconsistency, so they're not uncatchable, but obviously that depends on Arsenal performing very well throughout the season. So in terms of a realistic target, a realistic goal, I would say a challenge for the top 4 positions. I think that's really a more than feasible target for Arsenal to be thinking about. Now, of course, again, if we do win a trophy, whether it's the FA Cup, the League Cup or the Europa League, that'll be a nice little bonus as well. But I think realistically a top 4 challenge would, what I would think is a achievable target for Arsenal going ahead for this season. So then, let's talk about some of the issues going ahead. Now, I've watched a lot of fan channels and looked at a lot of Arsenal forums, and yes, one of the biggest issues, as it seems every single year of Arsenal, is the transfer activity, or indeed the lack of transfer activity. Now, as you all know, we've got so many issues with so many players. Towards the end of the season, despite the FA Cup success, there are so many players that are deemed not good enough or not performing well enough that, you know, have to be shipped out of the club. And the point is that we really should have seen lots of departures. Really, if you think about it, maybe 7-8 weeks ago, we should have seen departures out of the club, and then that's when we can go ahead and start bringing players in. Because what you have to remember, of course, in this current pandemic is that any signing will of course have to spend a couple of weeks in quarantine first before they can come over, right? So the fact that Arsenal haven't really got rid of a lot of the players involved really is alarming, in my opinion. You know, we've had so many issues, the likes of Guendouzi and Torreira. You know, people are doubting whether Koscielny is up to the task. We've got the never-ending issue with Mesut Ozil, which I'll talk about in a minute. There's the ongoing issues, of course, between Leno and Martinez. I'll elaborate that in a minute. But yeah, there's so many issues and so many players, you know, that we deem not good enough. You know, Mustafi as well, that if we don't think they're fit enough for the purpose, why are they still here? They should have been out the door. I know a lot of people have criticised Bellerin, but I think I still see potential in Bellerin. I still think if he can get his mind right and his mentality right, he can perform quite well. If you look at the last couple of games of the season, he really did show, I think, again, the potential and how really good of a player he can be. He's got lots of pace and he's got lots of influence, especially down the wings. And I can actually remember the last couple of games, him and Tierney, both down the flanks, were very successful for Arsenal in the last couple of games towards the end of the season, down both flanks. So I just think I haven't given up yet on Bellerin. I know a couple of people have, and yes, he has caused controversy on social media every now and again, but I still think he's got a lot to offer to Arsenal if he can keep his mentality in check. Now, of course, the big burning issue, of course, is Aubameyang, the club talisman, deemed the most important player, the club's top scorer. He is, yes, very essential to Arsenal's plans and ambitions this season, without question. To be honest, I think he's probably signed. I know this is an ongoing issue and everybody has rightly questioned, why is it, if he loves the club and he's committed to the club, then why hasn't he confirmed his signature 2, 3, 4 weeks ago? Why have we yet again got to always go down to the nth hour before we can confirm who's staying and who's going? Now, in all likelihood, he's probably haggling in terms of the contract negotiations. And I think overall it's fair, because if you look at his perspective, he's thinking, well, I'm the top player, I'm the top goal scorer, I'm scoring in some of the big games and we're winning trophies because of the goals that I'm scoring. I really should be the top earner. And of course, we're going to bring up Mesut Ozil again and the money he's earning. So Aubameyang is probably rightly questioned, why isn't he the top earner? Why isn't he, you know, bringing in the most salary because he is the top player? Now, I'm hearing reports and just speculation that yes, he's going to be paid anything north of up to £300,000 a week. Now, we also know that Ozil is currently on £350,000 a week, so Aubameyang would have an expectation to at least match Ozil's rate or even surpass Ozil's rates, because he's obviously playing consistently and he's performing consistently, everything that Ozil isn't. So why shouldn't he justify being paid the same amount of Ozil or even more. So I think he has signed. But you have to consider that if he was to go anywhere, he'd obviously have to be in quarantine as well for a couple of weeks before joining any new club. So if he were to go, I think we'd be hearing about it very soon. So I think he has signed. I think he will stay. I think he's very comfortable there. He's a top player. He gets to play every week. He's obviously enjoying the football. You can tell he's very happy and content at the moment with Arsenal, which we could say there's a good side and a bad side to that, because I think a lot of the time we've had certain top players who are quite content to be the big fish in the small pond, if you like. They're very comfortable to pick up their big money. There's always the argument where you think, well, if a top player had really any signs of big ambitions, then they did leave Arsenal, right? We've seen it so many past with Van Persie, Fabregas, Sanchez, etc. You can criticise the fact that maybe they left the club, but they've always gone on to win trophies at other clubs for the most part, right? So the fact that you're a top player and you're willing to stay at Arsenal, really you could question your ambition, but at the same time, is it a case of him being committed to the club? Well, we'll find out this season, won't we? But I think if I'm a better man, I would say Aubameyang is going to stay. Lacazette. Now, I know a lot of people have criticised Lacazette because of his lack of goals. And I think the difference between him and Aubameyang is that Aubameyang is a much more of an expansive footballer. So he can play through the middle, yes, but he can also drift out to the wing, pick up the ball, maybe beat one or two players, and do a lot more damage in a much more for freer role. Whereas Lacazette is very much your typical out and out striker. He is your centralised striker, your fox in the box, right? So he is somebody who needs the team to supply him with the assists and the through ball. He cannot pick it up and beat three players and score. Yes, he's got a powerful shot on him, so he has got potential, I think, to still make a major contribution to the team. I just think it's a case of he needs a better supply and he needs to play more consistently and always through the middle. But we'll wait and see. I don't know. It's a bit late in the day if we're really going to sell Lacazette. I think Lacazette deserves one more season because of his work rate, and I do think you can potentially get him more goals if you give him a better supply line. But we'll see at the moment what goes on with him in the future. He has, of course, signed Willian. Now, yep, it was a very easy, convenient signing. He was free on a transfer. He has got Premier League experience. He's already based in London. It was a bit of a no-brainer, really. I think he is a slightly above average player. He's very quick on the ball. I mentioned before in previous video I did, which you can check on the channel, where I commented on the initial signing of him. He's very hard-working, very industrious. He's got a good shot on him, good free kick on him. So I think he'll do okay. I think he will contribute well to the team, and maybe he'll get a couple of goals and add a couple of assists. So that'll be good as well for Willian when we come on now. I'm not going to expand too much more because I've already commented on here. So the next question is Pepe. Now, when we initially signed Pepe, I was very sceptical because I realised he was young and had a lot of potential when he played in France. But for 72 million, I was just racking my brain because I think, why are we not bolstering in the squad with defenders and stronger midfielders? So again, I was very at odds with spending that money on Pepe, but he has got talent, he has got potential, he's got a great left foot on him. Again, I don't know why Arteta certain games was always persisting on playing him on the right side. You know, I know managers like to play players on the opposite side so they can cut in and have a shot, but I think play him on the left side, the strongest foot. And I think what I want to see more from Pepe this season is actually running at players. There were so many times last season when he would start to run, he'd maybe be one-on-one and they'd always check back or check inside and play the ball inside. I think, you know, he's very young, usual pace. Let's try and encourage him to be more direct and go at defenders. You know, can earn free kicks, earn corners, make the initiative of an attacking play much more strong enough for Arsenal in matches. And I want to see obviously a much more goal output. Now, a lot of people are going to say, well, he's young and he's adjusting and we need to give him time. But for 72 million, I think I'd be expecting a bit more in terms of goal output. And yes, you could throw that output or that accusation at Lacazette. Yes, that's a perfectly valid argument. You could say the same thing about Alexander as well. But I just think I want to see more from Pepe this season. I just want to see more goals, more attacking intent, and much more impression throughout. So this season, I think we need to keep a very close eye on Pepe and make sure that we do get an improvement from him in the future. Now, I've talked about the goalkeeping situation. So, as we all know, Leno, for the most part of last season, solidified himself as really the top goalkeeper, and then he got injured, and then Martinez has taken over, and he has impressed us a lot with his decision making. He's very proactive, comes forward, deals with situations, which is always good for a goalkeeper because it makes your defenders feel more secure and more confident. And yeah, he's been very well. He's a very good shot stopper. He's very confident in his ability, and it presented quite a dilemma for Arsenal. I don't think we've had this for many years now, where we've had two high quality, competent goalkeepers, and the debate has been back and forth. Should we be Leno? Should we be Martinez? Because the problem is, when you have two equally skilled goalkeepers, it's very rare that you're able to keep both within the same squad, because a goalkeeper is a position you don't really want to be chopping changing. As long as the goalkeeper's fit, you want to keep the same goalkeeper all the time, right? I can understand for League Cup matches and maybe Europa League, especially if we've got to the group phases and we've already qualified and you get a few dead rubber matches, I can understand. But in general, you want to try and keep the same goalkeeper all the time. Now, a lot of people, they favoured Martinez, and I think that's a bit where you're in the current, right? It's almost people are forgetting Leno, and they think if Leno's fit again, Martinez should start on Saturday. But I probably would still go for Leno. I just think it's always the way when a keeper comes in and does very well for a month or two, you get overhyped and excited. But Martinez has done a very good job. Now, at the time of making this video, there are certain rumours and speculation that I'm reading on here that Martinez has made an agreement to sign for Aston Villa for around 20 million. So I've just been going on Twitter, looking at the various newspaper articles, and a lot of people are making videos and reporting on this. So when you get a lot of different sources reporting on the same story, there tends to be more truth to it. So it may look like the decision has already been made and that Martinez wanted to go. And fair enough, I suppose. He did come out, I think, recently and stated that, yeah, he did want to be number one. He didn't want to be stuck on the bench. You know, many people felt he earned this spot as number one. And like I said before, it's very difficult to keep two high-class goalkeepers in the same position. So if that's what he wants to do, then fair enough. He's going to get around 60 grand a week, I think they're reporting on. So if that's what he wants to do, then fair enough. Let him go and enjoy his time, and thank you very much for your service. I can't really complain. Like I said, if a player has performed well for the club and they've done right for the club, but they feel they're not getting the first team chances and they want to go somewhere else that will offer them the first team chances, then you can't really hold that against them, can you? So I've got no problem with him if he decides to leave for Aston Villa and get some more first team football. Now we come on to the big issue, the never-ending issue, the elephant in the room, the kind of three-headed monster that won't go away, and that is Mesut Ozil. The complex of Mesut Ozil within Arsenal, the never-ending debate and discussion. You know, when he first signed, a lot of people, I can vividly remember, about 4 years ago, I think now, at least, and everybody was comparing him to the next Bergkamp. That's the sort of influence we were looking for with Ozil. We saw how well he played for Germany, and of course at the time, Real Madrid as well. And in the beginning of the season, his first season, he started off very well. He was doing a lot of assists, getting involved in the team play. Now, of course, we could argue the team was a lot better back then than what it was now. And it just seems like every season post his debut year, he's just got, I don't know if it's progressively worse, just less involved, less impactful, less influential. And again, just like you're looking at many other players, for what we paid for him, what was it, over 50 million we paid for Mesut Ozil, and he just hasn't delivered. And more the crowd and the fans are putting him under more scrutiny. We've seen him disappear a lot of times from the big matches, not really get involved. Even though he's on the pitch, it's very hard to notice that he's even there at times. A lot of times you think he's invisible, he's just sleepwalking through matches. And over time, I think, especially with Emery and Arteta, they've left him out of the team, left him out of the squad. Now, Obviously, there's been stuff said behind the scenes, and Ozil, he's a very expressive character. He's not afraid to speak his mind and defend his corner. And I think overall, there's been some form of disagreement, I think, behind the scenes going on with Emery first, and then I think with Arteta later. The fact that when you have a player and they're fit and they're not even included in the squad, that tells you everything. You know, if you have a top class player, you'd always keep him on the bench, right? At the very least, you can bring him on and they can hopefully produce a match-winning moment for you if you need it, right? But he's not even included in the squad. So things have gone on behind the background, and then we've had the ongoing discussion about the fact that he's essentially just sitting on his contract. You know, any top-class player, I mentioned it before about having that ambition. You'd want to just leave Arsenal, go to another top club and get some first-team football, right? But Ozil was just willing to sit there on his 350 grand a week contract. He came up recently saying he's staying, he's got no reason to go, he's fit to play. If he doesn't get picked, it's kind of not his problem, not his issue, and he's willing to sit there and just stay on his contract. And of course, a lot of fans have criticised him for this because they've questioned his commitment, his real desire to the club. You know, we've got kind of a similar situation with Gareth Bale at Real Madrid, but I think it's slightly different because I think there is a more of a desire for Gareth Bale to play, and Gareth Bale, I think, is a more consistent performer for Madrid than what Mesut Ozil is for Arsenal. And fans have just said, you know, should we just bite the bullet and just pay him out of his contract and just get him out the door, because it's just a distraction for the club. I'm sure it causes maybe a bit of disharmony within the dressing room. Ozil, I'm pretty sure, has a lot to say within the background. So should you just get rid of him? Just buy out his contract and just get shot of him. If you don't think he figures in your plans, if you don't think he can make a big enough contribution to the team, and you think he's having a negative influence within the dressing room, then it's not really worth keeping him. Now, obviously, we all know, of course, Arsenal are very, like I said before, very accountant-like with their finances. They obviously don't want to just pay him out of his contract and not get anything back, right? They would ideally look to have an offer come in for him. But at the moment, of course, if Ozil's not playing and Ozil's not in the squad, then you can't really expect anybody to come in for him, can you? Right? So it's a difficult case on here to see what we can expect from Ozil. I know he recently did play in the pre-season against Aston Villa, didn't he, when we lost 3-2. So people have maybe looked at that as a sign that maybe he can figure again in Arteta's plans going forward. Maybe there is still a chance for a resurgence, for some sort of redemption. We'll wait and see. We'll wait and see what happens. I suppose the only way you could find that is if you play him, right? If you play him consistently, let's say give him a run of 6, 8, 10 games, obviously depending on the results that a team acquires. And if he performs well, then obviously you keep playing him. And then maybe if he doesn't and plays up, then maybe you just continually leave him on the bench. But again, it's just, we talk again about the transfer activity. That is an issue that really should have been sorted out weeks and weeks and weeks ago. You make the decision whether you want to play him or not. And if you're not, then you just get shot of him. I know there's other kind of conspiracy theories where we talk about Ozil and the fact that he has to play or be involved in the bench so Arsenal can sell merchandise, etc., because obviously he's got image rights with Adidas, etc. You know, I'm not going to delve too much into that into further, but I always focus more on the issues on the pitch. And at the end of the day, if you've got a player who's unhappy, he doesn't want to be there, then just get him. It's just a more of a negative impact on the team if you've got players that are unhappy and don't want to be there. That's my opinion. I know it's very difficult because you don't want to buy him out of his contract, but we'll wait and see what happens with the Mesut Ozil situation. I'm pretty sure there'll be some other statement or some other incident that will go on for the next week or two. So yeah, I think overall those are the main issues. You know, I've got a lot of young players that we want to see continue on their progress and development. Obviously, we've got the likes of Willock and Saka and Nketiah. We want to see those players really push on. We want to see Tierney, of course, continue his consistent performances on the pitch as well. So there is some form of optimism. I just think we need to match that optimism with a lot more of a realistic expectation. So let's look at the fixtures that we've got, the first couple. So obviously we're away to Fulham this Saturday. I think that's Saturday lunchtime. It's on BT Sport, isn't it? Away to Fulham, you know, baptism of fire for them, coming back into the Premier League, managed by Scott Parker, of course. Now, in normal standard, we'd expect to win. We'd expect to win normally like a 3-1 result or something. But again, we don't know, because of the current form that this team's in, how they'll get on with that. Fulham will be up for it, of course, because of their Premier League first appearance again. So hopefully we can get the win, but I think realistically, I think a draw, you know, maybe a 2-2 draw or something like that. Would that be too bad? It depends, I suppose, on how the draw happens. If we go 2-0 up and throw away 2-goal lead, that won't be very good, will it? But we'll see what happens. But I know we should be expecting to go to Fulham and get the win. I know, of course. But just judging where the team is at the moment, I wouldn't be too outraged of a score draw away to Fulham. And then later on, of course, we've got home to West Ham. I would expect to beat West Ham. Of course, I think they're going to struggle again this season. We've then later on away to Leicester in the League Cup. That's going to be difficult. And again, we'll see if Arteta will rest a lot of players, because, of course, we're involved in the Europa League as well this season. And then, of course, we're away to Liverpool. And I hope fans don't get carried away with that Community Shield victory, of course, because that was a one-off game. I wouldn't worry too much about that, or indeed the 1-1 draw I think we recently got against Liverpool before, so I wouldn't worry too much about that. I just think Liverpool are the best team, they are the top team. I think they're going to win the league again this season. So again, if we lose, I don't think we should overreact and start calling for Arteta's departure just yet. You know, it's a difficult game at Anfield for anybody who plays Liverpool. And then I think the last one of the first 5 games is away to Sheffield United at home. So again, that's another one. I know we have struggled with Sheffield United a lot recently. Again, that tells you where we are as a club and the current state that we're in. But again, at home, I'd like to think we can get 3 points against Sheffield United at home. And I know a couple of weeks after that, I think we've got Man City, I think, and then Chelsea, I think, along the way shortly after that. So I'm looking for a decent start in terms of the league for which we can build on. Maybe out of those 4 or 5 games, maybe we can get 2 or 3 wins and maybe a draw, and just expect the 1 defeat at Liverpool. I think if we can get that 2 or 3 wins, 1 draw, and then a loss to Liverpool, I think that's not a bad start. That's not a bad expectation to have for the first start of the season. Saying this at the time of this video now, what I expect is an improvement over last year and a serious challenge for the top 4. If we miss it by a point or 2, then at least we can say, well, we're making progress, we're moving forward, and maybe we can build on that progress for the following season after that, and hopefully can buy some goddamn tough defenders and midfielders. I think at the point now it's kind of leaving it too late, because as I mentioned before, any player you get has to spend a couple of weeks in quarantine before they can come over. So unfortunately, I think Arsenal just left it too late to get everyone major in. I know everyone's talking about Partey coming in, but is that going to be enough? That's the problem. And you've still got the issue of the players that we talked about, whether they want to deem themselves good enough. You know, you've got Guendouzi still, and Torreira and Kolasinac and Mustafi. All of those players, you need to decide whether they're good enough or not. And if they're not, you need to get them out, and then hopefully with enough time getting players in to replace them. And I just don't think Arsenal, they've just left it too late. This is always the way. People will talk about lack of funds and they'll blame COVID, etc. People will counter that with Chelsea. Chelsea will always have more funds than Arsenal, but you look at other clubs, they're spending big as well, showing big intent as well. So I think I wanted to see more intent of Arsenal within the transfer window, but not to be. I just think we're going to pretty much have the squad that we've got right now. I think, you know, maybe they may pull off Partey later on, and we'll see maybe a couple of departures from Lacazette. Maybe we've managed to get Mkhitaryan now off the books apparently now. Yeah, that was always good. He wasn't the right signing. He was clearly just a Man United reject. That, you know, that signing just never worked out as well. So we will wait and see. So if you're asking me now, I know it's a bit of an extensive video, but if you're asking me now what I'd expect from Arsenal, I would say a realistic challenge, top 4, and then we can take it from there, going ahead for the season, going forward for the next couple of years. That is my realistic expectation, a realistic and sustained challenge for the top 4, and any cup wins would be a nice bonus to put on top. So those are my very extensive thoughts on the preview of Arsenal's season for 2020 and 2021. Let me know what you think in the comments below. What are your expectations for Arsenal? Do you think a top 4 finish is a realistic target? Do you want to see Arsenal finish even higher? Do you actually think they can actually put a consistent title challenge, as like this that seems? Do you think Arsenal are actually capable of doing it? Or do you think we're looking for another kind of mid-table finish? We should kind of rein in our expectations in check, let Arteta have a season or two to fully make his mark and impression on the team, and then we can think about judging him more harshly maybe the season after, when he's had a bit of time and a couple of transfer windows to try and make an impression on the squad. So that's it for now. Let me know what you think in the comments below. I will try and do a match report on the first match against Fulham, and also I think West Ham as well. I think that's on Sky Sports next week, I believe, as well. So I will try and do a few more match reports of Arsenal. I don't know if I will quote every single game, but I will try and provide a lot more coverage on the results and the games and the performances throughout the season if I can. So that's it for now on a preview of Arsenal's season for 2021. Let me know what you think in the comments below. That's it for now. Take care of yourselves, and I will see you very, very soon.